Good evening, my friends and acquaintances. I'm now going to do part 2 of my Ranter's News of the Day. A few items from my previous video I neglected to mention. One involving the background checks, which obviously Trump has been flip-flopping back and forth on what's his stance on. I find it ironic that he wants to couch all these mass shootings, especially people of the peach-colored skin pigmentation on the Crayola chart, to mental illness. That he mentions, each one of these shooters he always mentions something about they have to have some mental illness and so forth. And in one of the rallies recently, he talked about how we need to build more mental institutions. I brought that up. That's fine. But doesn't anyone find it ironic that he keeps bringing this up, and yet he's the one that rolled back Obama's restrictions on the mentally ill being able to purchase a gun? So the very thing that he is drawing an excuse of, because Lord knows we wouldn't want anyone to draw the conclusion that maybe his rhetoric and the things he tweets is inspiring people, such as little Patrick in El Paso. No, we don't want to do that, because clearly it has to be mental illness. So it's ironic that he will come out with this mental illness saying when he himself made it easy for people who are mentally ill to purchase a gun. And the other bit of news that I wanted to get into from the last video is that it's interesting how this trip to Denmark that he canceled was a trip that he himself invited himself to. That Denmark didn't invite him to come, but he invited himself. He was going to go over to Denmark and be a part of the World War II commemoration, to which Denmark was, okay, that's good. They have a standing invitation for world leaders, such as the president, to come and visit, like most of our friendly allied nations do. And so that was fine. And then he disinvites himself because of his tiff with the Prime Minister over how she declined his invitation or his request to purchase Greenland. And clearly now people from their government is not all that happy, and there's a lot of backlash going back and forth on that, but no, we discussed that before. But for this portion of this Ranter's News, I'm going to go into how the last few days, from last week up until now, how Trump's feud with the squad has deteriorated and devolved into something that is just ugly. First starting with him tweeting that Israel should not allow 2 Congresswomen of the United States to visit them, to ban them. That if they allowed them in, it would show great weakness. Great weakness to who and where? You just use words. I don't think you describe it. I don't think you could describe anything you say. But he said that, and his buddy Bibi Netanyahu also chimed in on that. So then, boom, they're no longer welcome to go into Israel. That, of course, leads to a little bit of backlash. Of course, the squad responds, and some pressure is being laid to bear that this is highly inappropriate, that Israel has allowed congressional personnel, senators, the dignitaries, in, not only from the United States, but government officials from all over the world. So just to ban them, no matter what their issue is, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth. And is particularly emotionally scarring, especially for Representative Tlaib, whose grandmother lives in the Palestinian territories, and this visit may have been the last time she would have seen her. So After some pressure being mounted, the Israeli government reversed itself and said they would allow them to come in so long as they do not talk about the BDS, the boycott initiative that's going on on the Israeli government, and pretty much don't badmouth the Israeli government. Unfortunately, that's kind of a half-hearted gesture, but unfortunately, because of principle, they declined, and she declined over this, despite the fact this trip could have been the last time she saw her grandmother. She made an emotional statement on this, to which Trump, of course, then trashes, saying that she was grandstanding. He's a 72-year-old, 12-year-old. But, be that as it may. For me, I always feel like when it comes to Israel, we can't seem, at least our government, or certain aspects of our government, we can't seem to treat our ally as an adult with nuance. We have been its lifeline since its inception after World War II. We have supported Israel, and we should support Israel. Israel, it's not up to debate that Israel is always in danger from its neighbors. There are those governments in the Islamic world that wants it to make its mission to wipe it off the map. That is awful, that is horrible, and we should defend them for that. But in that defense, we have to be adult and recognize when sometimes Israeli government is not wearing the white hat. That there's sometimes we have to check them. There are some inhumanities that they themselves are doing. Talking about their own African migrants that were coming, that they have basically an issue with now, that they want to expel, or the various things that they do with the Palestinians. And again, this is not one of those clean-cut things when it comes to the Israelis and the Palestinians. So we can't just say, oh, well, they're all right, or these people are all wrong. If you look at a map of, let's say, Jerusalem and the territory around Jerusalem, and you look at the places where the Palestinian territories are, where they're separated, in that someone who is a Palestinian man or woman of good standings who just wants to go to work, who has to cross 4 to 6 hours worth of checkpoints to get to some place that if he drove there straight shot to that place, he could be there maybe with traffic, maybe a half hour. But because the area is so in danger, and you have to acknowledge that there are too many of these Palestinians who ruin it for everybody else, who do get into violence and makes these type of things justified. And at the same time, the responses and their reprisals can be just as barbaric from the Israeli government point of side towards them. So it is a mess, but it is a mess that we have to be adult and recognize. But no one, at least on the Republican side, they don't want to do that. From Trump to various members of the Republican Party, like Tom Cotton, who wanted to blow up the Iran deal by sending his little note. It is ironic where you have people who will proclaim their loyalty to Israel, to Jerusalem, that Trump will move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem despite protests. I remember watching them having that ceremony and split screen the violence that was happening at the same time. But it's like, they equate loyalty to the Israeli government as an equate to loyalty to the religious aspect. So much so that if you criticize the Israeli government in anything that they do, which has nothing to do with their belief in God, that you are suddenly an anti-Semite. So I'm waiting for someone to jump on Bernie Sanders' case that during this time when they were denying Omar and Tlaib entry into Jerusalem, he suggested that, you know, if they're going to deny our congressional members their visitation into Israel, then maybe we need to look at our practice of how we support them financially. It is an interesting dilemma, because Israel is the number one foreign country that we give aid to. From, I think the number, we'll look it up, but I think the number is like, so far 146 billion, and from our time of its inception up until now. We clearly support them militarily. And all that while they deny our congressman entry because of a tweet. It's fairly ridiculous. I'm sure there's more to it, and please get into it. I don't think there should, in anything that is being said from me or from anybody else, there should never be a moment where people cannot just question or just say, you know what, that might be inaccurate. And, you know, school, do so. That's fine. But the manner of how this went about is just the extension of Trump's feud with the Squad, which adds a disgusting level of pettiness that is pathetic. When he says it would bring great weakness to Israel if they allow Tlaib and Omar in, it was great weakness to oblige our president to allowing our American citizens not to be allowed in their country. You know, when you think about it, it's far more brave to face your critics and debate them and show your point of view, listen to their point of view. They could be right, they can be wrong, but at least you show the respects to do so. And all the while all this was happening, and as the background to what was going on nowadays, that on Tuesday Trump proclaimed from the White House that any American Jews that vote for Democrats must be completely uninformed or disloyal. Disloyal to who? People bring up that this is reminders of the trope upon Jews, even American Jews, of having a double loyalty or dual loyalty. And this is not the first time he brought this concept up, because he went and spoke before a Jewish group when Benjamin Netanyahu was visiting the States, and when he was mentioning him, he was saying that, oh, Benjamin Netanyahu's coming, you're a prime minister. He's not their prime minister. They're not. It is not. They are American citizens. You know, there can be some components of their belief system that draws them to Israel, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they were Israeli citizens before they're American citizens. I'm an American descendant of Italians and Irish, and as such I was raised Catholic. Well, just because I have that Catholic upbringing doesn't necessarily mean that the Pope, which I like and respect, he could be my spiritual leader. He's not my leader, because I'm an American. I don't live in Vatican City. I don't live in Italy. He is not my political leader. Any policies within Vatican City, I don't have to, uphold. There's no like divine edict of picking up litter that I have to, go over and do. It is interesting that we, as Americans, we're not a monolithic group when it comes down to our demographics. People tend to think, and they do that in the media sometimes, and it's not all that smart, where they take and proclaim that a certain group will vote one way or a certain group will vote another way. You go by percentages and averages, and yeah, you might, but you can't say that just because you're getting those percentages and averages means that that's a guarantee. Now, in saying that, while Trump and many of his Republican underlings profess their veneration towards Israel, American Jews have traditionally voted Democratic. Trump in 2016 only got 24% of the American Jewish vote. And judging by the number of American Jews that have shown up in protest to what he says, not only upon saying that they'd be disloyal if they voted for Democrats, but they actually showed up in solidarity with Tlaib and Omar, and how it was ridiculous to advocate for them being banned from Israel. Because they are adults, and understand this is childish foolishness that he is propagating to continue his little feud, because that helps his base, helps him keep his base all energized. Alright, that topic out of the way. To this next topic that I'm going into, it kind of reflects what I've been saying, is that when Trump does these things where it is outrageous, or it's racially assholery, but all the stuff that outrages you, and it outrages the media, and so the media keeps it in the headlines, and the media keeps pounding on it in every segment, where we have panels of people trying to analyze what he means, because of course as president we have to listen to everything he has to say. All that could be the distraction to what is happening underneath. And what is happening underneath in this current news, that despite the fact that he went out of his way and positively wanted to promote the production of flu vaccines, and after so many years of being against inoculations, thinking that they would lead to autism, which he said in 2014, Trump has now gone out and said that people need to vaccinate their children, especially with the measles outbreak that happened because of clearly anti-vaxxers who didn't get the memo. So that positive thing, which is great, that President Trump should get credit for, that credit goes away when you find out today that he is wanting to not vaccinate migrants that are detained before the next flu season. The CBP saying that because that the inoculations may take too long and they're not going to hold these people for long, which is a lie, but whatever. Let's see what they actually said. Pardon me, because that was not really. Let's see. The U.S. government will not give flu vaccines to migrant families being held in detention centers near the U.S.-Mexico border. Custom and Border Protection Agency announced the decision Tuesday, weeks before the flu season begins. In general, due to the short-term nature of CBP holdings, the time the vaccine takes to begin working, and the complexities of operating vaccination programs, neither the CBP nor its medical contractors administered vaccinations to those in our custody, the CBP spokesman said in a statement on CBS News. The spokesman did not respond to further questions about the policy. The U.S. will not provide vaccines for migrants even after 3 migrant children died last year from the flu. Are you okay with this as American citizens? As people who grew up, like I did in my 40 years of life, touted and venerate our idealism, that we grew up saying that we are the shining city on the hill, that we are supposed to be America #1, that we look back at the histories of other countries and the things that happens there, like concentration camps, and even our own history with internment camps. And we feel the anger that happens to people from afar, and we feel shame for the things that happened here at home over those years ago. And then we say, never again. And yet here we are doing it again. God Almighty. Earlier this month, doctors associated with the Harvard and Johns Hopkins sent a letter to Congress members calling for an investigation into the health care at migrant detention facilities. Doctors specifically cited migrant children who died from the flu, stating that flu deaths are fairly rare events for children living in the United States. We suspect that the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Health and Human Services may not be following best practices with respect to screening, treatments, and isolation and prevention of influenza, the doctor wrote. According to the CDC, flu viruses often begin to increase in October. The flu season typically peaks between December and February. The flu activity can continue as late as May. And you know why this is happening. This is yet another one of those deterrents that this administration wants to try to ward away migrants from coming here. And, you know, they do so, and they don't parse anymore the differences between migrants seeking asylum and illegal immigrants, because they make it harder and harder for migrants who come to our door and seeking asylum from being allowed in. And so when they make them desperate, then they do desperate things, and then when they do desperate things, then this administration will point to that and say, see, they're not doing asylum, they're illegal, they're trying to jump our border, they should not treat them any better than anybody else, and so cage them. As Lindsey Graham says, he doesn't care if they're caged for 400 days, they're all illegal. Now this is the rant. For those who've seen me do this over the videos on social media, I get mad at this because we are supposed to be better than this. Despite our politics, you know, we still have the sense of right and wrong. And there are so many people who support this president and buys into this and defends it because it's not their children. I mean, you hear that, you heard that like a year or so ago on Fox News, on Fox Morning Show. I don't know. You know, I can constantly ask, where's the humanity? Well, humanity's out to lunch. Where was the humanity when that protest group got run over by that ice guard in his Jeep, where Lou Dobbs said he was within his rights? He was within his rights to run people down and injure them because he was trying to park his car. We know Lou has no particular love for anyone who is an immigrant or is a migrant. I mean, this is another one of these people who, you know, as much as they can rail about illegal immigration and what that happens, they also rail against legal immigration because they think they just want people of merit to be able to come in here. Yeah. I'm sure they would pass up someone from Norway over someone from Venezuela because they don't speak a word of English and they don't have any job skills. How many of our grandparents or our great-grandparents or their parents came over to this country without speaking a word of English or having thick Gaelic accents? Who did not have two pennies rubbed together, who did not have any job skills, that were fleeing the chaos of their own countries to start a new life here? That saw the plaque of the Statue of Liberty? And back when those words mattered, since Kenny Cuccinelli wants to, despite the fact he claims that he doesn't want to do it, he nonetheless, tries to rewrite that poem. Come on, guys. Come on, girls. Ladies. Gentlemen. Come on. Seriously. It makes me funny. It makes me laugh that someone like Ted Cruz, who also wants to rail for, merit-only immigration, that you have to have a certain, certain level in money, so you don't want to be a drag on our society, and certain education skills that you can be a benefit, while his own family escaped Cuba, not knowing a word of English, 2 pennies to rub together, doing odd jobs until they made their life here, until they went to Canada so Ted could be born, because he's a Canadian too. But that was okay back then. It's not okay now. What we had back in the day, towards the turn of the 20th century, we can't seem to have now. That I believe that is kind of selective. Because again, I think, as Trump said, that why don't we have more people from Norway come over? Why is it just people from shithole countries? So if it was maybe people who are immigrating here from the Nordic region, Northern Europe, Western Europe, they won't have to go through the same restrictions and demands to know that they're PhDs, as opposed to someone from Nigeria or Chad or in our own hemisphere, Venezuela, Ecuador. I don't know. They have to be geniuses to be allowed in. We all want what's best for this country. But that should not be at the sacrifice of what makes America great. In our innovation, in our diversity. To make you afraid of it and telling you who's to blame for it is what they want to do for this coming election. And those to make you afraid of is to be afraid of the other. And the blame for your lot in life, however you got to your lot in life, will be the blame of the other. They must have done something. They're dragging industry down, they're dragging prices down, paychecks down, because their existence can't possibly be, our emerging automation in our IT world, isn't? No, clearly not. It can't be, the Amazon drones that are delivering packages, or the self-driving trucks that are delivering goods. No, it's the immigrant on the highway selling oranges, or the other immigrant that works 3 jobs just to make sure that children can go to school and be fed. And certainly Of course, it's not the blame of these businesses that lures people in who are illegal so they can pay them cheap. And then when the times comes for a big ICE raid, then 680 people at the Coke Foods plant can get arrested on the same day their children are on the first day of school, but the management gets nothing, no consequence for hiring illegals, for making sure they have faked up documents. Yeah, there's no hypocrisy there, right? It's always been my it's always been my amusement when I hear about sanctuary cities, while people rail against sanctuary cities, but they don't quite go against the business owners. They'll go against the politicians. They'll go against the people themselves who just crawled and clawed their way to get here to make a better life, who do not commit violent crimes towards anyone, who does not do anything with drugs or just working, but they're here. So they get nabbed, but the business owners who lured them in the first place, they'll just keep chugging along. Alright, that was my rant. Alright. I'm probably going to do a couple more of these because our political atmosphere is leaving me so much material to get into. So we might be talking about chosen ones and kings of Israel in the next video. But until then, this is the Ranter Matt, and all I do is rant because the urge to rant is rising. See you later.